All right. Welcome back. So this is part two of this series on live composition, um, and yeah, I won't do a full entire recap. Just go watch the first part, and you can skip to the second half of the video somewhere around there, and it'll start telling you kind of what the piece is about and how we got to this sort of formal idea. Um, the idea is, we're using Peter Sloterdijk's, what is it, an essay called La musique retrouvée. And yeah, without going into full detail on that again, so we'll start making some music today. So yeah, I feel like I'm talking really fast, so I need to chill. So up until now, we've drawn this formal idea out of this, whole philosophical thing about our, why we desire music, why we like to make it, and why we like to sort of be in it as sort of a place, something that carries us away. And the idea is that it starts in the womb, and the types of rhythms and sounds we hear in the womb, and that's the apparently the ideal place, and that's what we're trying to get back to. So yeah, this whole kind of diagram is just a rough idea of how we will kind of approach the piece. It's just a sort of a guideline. It's not meant to be an exact form that we're trying to like fill in, but it gives us a place to go. It gives us a general shape and direction. And so, what I usually, I don't know, this is trying to think of exactly where to start from the beginning, probably. But yeah, so speaking of that, the composition process, at least for me, is a very, it's a pretty, messy process. I will usually start with what I think is the beginning, and then sometimes that will, once I get material out, I will start to recognize something that feels like it could be the actual climax of the piece, or that it could be the middle of the piece, or a main theme, or a secondary theme, or just something like that. Or yeah, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of kind of jumping around, and just doing a lot of kind of messy stuff just to find something that is workable, something that interests me, that I want to sort of develop. And yeah, again, so we kind of talked about the sonata form. We're not trying to write a sonata, but after I kind of, came up with the general formal idea, the sort of story here, this abstract thing, it reminded me of the sonata form, which is a classic form that's, constantly used and has been for, at least a couple few hundred years. And so I just wanted to illustrate the general kind of idea of that, because it is, helpful to know, I think. So yeah, I think we should start actually making some music. I'll do this probably for, I don't know, I'm going to go for maybe an hour or so, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll see. We'll just see. I'm not being strict about time here, but I do have to do other stuff, so I can't just spend all day doing this. Otherwise, I totally would. Yeah, so I think we should start right at the beginning, right in this little spot here. Pretty sure you can see my mouse. If not, I'll actually just draw. Actually, one sec. Yeah, so just this thing here, right? So we're kind of focused on just the very, very beginning, and this is kind of we're playing with this idea of what's our experience in the womb and how does that develop into, you know, desiring music or making music or being, wanting to live in a musical realm, uh, and how does that influence the type of music that we seek out? I guess that's going to be my approach here. This is kind of looking at personal. I'm making this personal. this is personal. Um, so so yeah, that's really all I can do, right? It's just make it about my own experience. Um, so I'm actually going to, let's see, we will just change the view here just a little bit. I will zoom in on this. And then we will just go like this, I guess. Grab the keyboard. Keyboard camera is relatively stable. So I'm just going to be kind of playing on the piano and just talking through it, so you won't really see my face. I might, change my setup in some way. It's kind of hard to have my giant 88 key keyboard right below me, so I have to like move over to it. Yeah, but I mean, whatever. How important is it to see my face anyway? Probably not very important. But yeah, and then just another heads up, I'm still dealing with trying to stabilize my overhead keyboard view. It's weird because it looks and seems really stable, but it's almost like it's this living creature that, like, as you watch the screen, it's like gradually just slowly moving and kind of shifting a little bit, so it might go crooked like it kind of is right now. So yeah, that kind of bugs me. I don't want that. So I'll find a more, permanent solution. But for now, it's going to be this, like, it's as if like some creature is just like holding their breath, just trying to do the job, stay as still as possible, but they can't help breathing, And so there's something alive in there. Anyway, so okay, we will just start getting into this. It's going to be really just rough. We're in the sketching process, so I'm just going to be making lots of just ugly, dumb sounds, and trying to kind of talk through the reason I'm doing these things. And we're just searching for just something that something that can work, that we can work with and start developing and chiseling away and shaping. So, I might record a little bit of stuff that's just really rough and noisy and just bad, and then we'll, figure it out from there. That's it. I mean, just have to start somewhere, right? So nothing is too sacred, nothing is too precious. This is the exploratory process. So yeah, that's probably enough of a preface there. 1 second. I'll just make this smaller. Get this out of the way. All right. And then again, I would definitely recommend watching the previous video, just so there's a lot of things there's a lot of sort of things I talked about just to expect, what to expect when watching me do this in particular, and my particular sort of approach. I'm not a pianist, so that was one little heads up I wanted to give in my other video. And yeah, so I'm not going to be playing the piano in a really like beautiful way with great technique or anything. So if you're a pianist and that bothers you, or it just bothers you at all, just know that this is a tool for me to just like get out rough ideas. So that's it. That's how I use it. Yeah. So let's get over there and start trying to formulate an idea. All right. Okay. All right. So as you know, in that very first little section there, that's in the green parentheses, that's, we're thinking about what is, what is my experience in the womb, my sonic experience. Um, so, it's going to be probably in the lower range. So like kind of down here, this kind of, these sort of low grumbles. You don't hear high pitches when you're in the womb, probably because you're covered, uh, you're in this sac with liquid, and that's just that's how it is. High frequencies don't get through. It's all kind of muffled and jumbled and just sort of beats and and grumbles and stuff. Yeah. So okay. So in the writing, he talks about the sort of two main elements that have some consistency, which is the heartbeat. So I'm thinking, just this like whatever, some heartbeat kind of situation like that. And then you have the mother's voice, right? So you have what he calls the archaic soprano. And when we think of soprano in music, we think of like high frequencies, like up here, something like that. But in the context of the womb, we're not hearing those high frequencies. We're hearing just probably higher frequencies than the heartbeat. And it will be more melodic. It will have a certain cadence. If you think of just your mother's, way of talking and her personality, and maybe the way she laughs, and just how often she talks. Maybe, I don't know. Like, just kind of thinking of these things. So we have this sort of heartbeat idea. For some reason, I'm inclined to just like go to this F right here. But, I think it's kind of boring to do, even though the reality is that we hear this consistent heartbeat that probably has just a slight bit of, variability like a normal heartbeat does. Musically, I think that's a little bit boring and a little too on the nose to just literally do this like heartbeat thing. So I kind of am inclined to just allude to that and maybe do a little bit of the heartbeat thing, like just something kind of consistent, but like, a little bit more abstracted, a little bit more, just a little bit more interesting, and not so on the nose, I guess. That's just what I'm inclined to do. But we're already kind of in cheesy territory, so it doesn't really matter how cheesy it gets. So I'm thinking of this, maybe here, this leaves, some lower grumble, room for really low kind of grumbles, which we're going to hear. We're going to hear this from, the third, source of sound is going to be from outside of the womb, right? So we're going to hear music being played, traffic, just other people talking, things like this. So lots of extraneous other vibrations, and some of those will be like really low grumbles, distant, maybe kind of jumbled, maybe noisy. And then we have the mother's voice, which will kind of stick. I'm just kind of thinking of this general range, just generally lower. So like the heartbeat's kind of this lower to middle section, and the mother's voice is kind of like, like something kind of exciting happens, whatever, something loud. In my case, my dad's maybe like listening to loud music in the basement. My mom just walked in, like this, like her heartbeat's going, and then it's like this kind of thing. This is just crazy. It's like larger, I don't know, if it's beat driven music, it's has kind of a pulse, but there's lots of other noise happening. Yeah. Okay, so Um, I want to sort of establish something like that. Um, and I might just be kind of quiet as I do this because it's really hard to like just constantly be talking while I'm thinking musically. That's going to be the challenge with these videos, so bear with me here. Um, all right, so I'm just going to kind of play around and not be so vocal for a minute. I'm thinking of something like um, I have this kind of like, it's like right now we're doing really surface material stuff. So, I have this general, this is considered a drone, this drone on F. So if I'm just going to stay on this tone and do this sort of beat thing, this heartbeat, thing, that is that's a drone, and everything else is going to be kind of floating around that tone. So do I want to be stuck with that? I'm not saying that it's a negative thing or that I will be stuck, but is that what I want to establish? I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. And then another thing I'm thinking about is like, so we maybe have this like, say the mother talking, we're not trying to like literally mimic speech, but just, I feel like this is, generally a positive sensation to the baby. It's like the mother's voice is supposed to be this soothing thing. And so maybe we associate, sort of an emotion to it, even though maybe we're not necessarily feeling emotions yet in there, but there's got to be something along those lines, right? There is emotional content in us, probably. I don't know. So then that's where kind of this like extra musical, not extra musical, but where we start becoming a little bit less literal about like making a voice, talking like, right? Like you're like hearing your mother's voice talking, so that's kind of some like melodic idea around there, kind of tracing this. I talk about tonality and how I write a tonal music. Yes, it's definitely going to turn out that way, but I'm hearing some kind of pseudo tonality, like a major thing going on here. So it's like we have the F here, right? This general happy little realm of F major. But we have all of the tones, all of the other notes out around that. We're not in F major, the key. So, we're assuming this is kind of a pleasant place to be for the most part, but then there's all these other noises too, so it's not just like clean. Okay, so I kind of like this idea of like not really using this octave of that F, because that kind of disappears, especially if we have this this F kind of continuously going for now. That will definitely not continue. So if that's annoying, just constantly repeating that's not going to continue throughout the entire piece. Actually, it will be a good idea to break that, to establish a comfortable grounding note like that, I think. Because we've got this comfort of the consistent beat of the mother while we're in the womb. That's like the ideal place. We have this like consistent thing happening. And then it's, as we're pulled out of the womb, it's this just absolute terror. And we're ripped away from that consistency. We don't hear our mother's heartbeat anymore, right? And we don't really hear her voice in the same way we did. And then there's all these other elements, bright light and other noises, everything, all of the sort of sonic realm becomes higher, right? So it all becomes higher frequency once you're out of that like wet sack. Once you're out of that bubble and you're into the real world, it's like probably sharp sounds and everything's louder and things like this. So these are concepts that we will consider working with as we kind of get go further along this. Yeah, up there, further over there, but we're working over here right now. Okay, so let's get to establishing. I'm thinking like, okay, let me just kind of think about this. Okay, so this feels like something I should probably start. Actually, 1 second. I like to have 2 pianos since we're not writing for the piano, for the piano to be performed necessarily. I can just make whatever. It's just pianos. It's the sound of the piano is what we're using. So we're not writing for the piano, and I established that in the previous video. So go check that out. All right, so we can start. This is kind of the bottom, I don't know, accompaniment, but I don't always use just accompaniment either. But we just have to see what's going to happen. So I might just record something just to get an idea down, and then I can work on some other stuff. And then we'll just adjust notes. Very tedious process, very kind of boring and unromantic. The ideas are romantic, but the work of it is very just really tedious as we try to just move notes around and just put, form, shape these sounds into something that feels alive, that feels like it has some life to it. So we're looking for an initial just idea, and I'm going to try to make it, I'm going to try my best not to make this too complex and too thick and too I don't know, just too involved, because for the purpose of this particular series, I don't want it to go, for 10 or 15 episodes. I want it to just be a few episodes, a few parts. So we'll try to stay a little bit more on the simple side or thinner texture in general. So maybe mostly a 2-part texture for now. So I'm just going to kind of record this really basic, like abstract heartbeat idea for now. Okay. Come here. Okay. So maybe this 9th situation. So we have, major 9 is really pleasant. So we'll just keep it kind of maybe in the pleasant realm of things, where the idea is that in the realm we are in the womb, we are in this sort of paradise in a way, for the most part, but then it's not that simple. So yeah, so I've got this idea so far of just this F major. That was what I was inclined towards. Don't have to think about it too much. It was just felt natural, so lean into it, right? So that's a little high. To me, this feels a little high for any frequency we might hear in the womb. So I want to, we've got this ninth here. Maybe that's about the highest I want to go. Still feels a little too high. We could just do this second here, or it could be this sort of, right, that's pleasant. Okay, I'm going to record something. I'm just going to undo that. So I'm just playing, so I don't really care. Like, nothing is precious right now. So I'm okay to just erase things. I don't, you can't be too kind of, you can't hold too tightly to things. You want to, keep things open. Okay, so. Okay, so I feel like just something is naturally happening here. And I don't love it. I think it's not the best, but I just I can't be too serious about or too. I don't want to be a perfectionist here, And I think that's what, just as an aside, this is something, I don't think I addressed this in the previous video, but, like one of the reasons that I used to not be able to finish a work, and I used to just, I had initial great ideas and then I would just always hit a wall, is because everything felt so important. It felt like, and I had this pressure on myself to be, to show this incredible talent and it's as if like each piece that I started had to be an absolute masterpiece. Like it had to be genius. And there was so much just pressure and, and because of other, parts of my life and just I don't know, personal development, I guess. Like, I had a lot of perfectionist issues and kind of um, I guess, there was a lot of OCD stuff, really extreme. There was depression, even, suicidal tendencies. and and I know it's super dark, but that's the reality. And all of those things are creativity killers, right? You can't be creative in those states, right? So if you have anxiety or depression, or you are, have, this perfectionist tendency and stuff like that, like uh, it's not going to be very fruitful. It's not going to be very productive. Trying to be creative uh, and be an artist inside of those emotions. Like um, on the other side of them, that's where they become absolute gold. Like it becomes a gold mine as soon as you're outside of those emotions and you're in a little bit clearer state, or a calmer state, or you've kind of worked through some of that. Even if you're going through it currently, it's like if you're, I don't know, and I can't speak for everybody, but this is generally true for probably most people. I hear this a lot from a lot of different creative types and artists that I talk to. Uh, you know, there's this thing where it's like, I don't know, like, don't know exactly where I was going with that, but ultimately, I have kind of, what helped me was to swing in the complete opposite direction in a way, which was kind of natural for me because I liked kind of chaotic music and stuff anyway, and just sort of complex, you know, complex sounds and just stuff like that. So it's not like it was like a forced thing, but I think it helps a ton to almost like embrace just the messiness of being creative. Like just get messy, make something bad, just put a bunch of stuff out there, just put a bunch of material on the page, and then start chiseling things out of it, and just tell a story. Like have fun. It's all just fun. It should be fun. And even the like dark, if your music is super dark and dissonant and like whatever has evil themes or like depressing stuff, or, really emotional stuff, like that's great for music. And but it can be like, while seeming like it's serious on the surface, by its aesthetic and by its general sound, the whole thing can be a funny thing for you, right? At least that's how it is for me. Like I will often write pretty brutal music, but it makes me laugh, and I don't know. I think that's kind of there's a bit of a metalhead aesthetic there, like I like a lot of black metal and death metal and stuff that's just brutal and dark and evil, and but it's funny. And they also, not some of these artists take it seriously, but others, people like Cannibal Corpse, these just death metal bands like that seem to be so evil and dark and wicked. They're having fun, and it's kind of a joke, like it's just fun. It's funny, and so that's kind of that's the approach that's going to help you just break through to the other side, is not holding anything too sacred, not making it too important and trying to make it perfect, especially from the beginning. Definitely do not try to like make some perfect little passage that you're starting with before moving on and finding the rest of the texture of the piece. You can always go back. You can keep just going back and adjusting and changing things. Like nobody is, holding you to anything. Like it's your creation, and the end product, the effect of the end product is all that matters. And really, even that might not even matter too much, as long as you just had a good time doing it. But if it's for a commission or something, obviously you want to serve the person who's commissioning you and their work, and that's another thing. But anyway, not to get too off track. But that's an important thing to be aware of is your current mental state, and are you just tired? Like it might not be that extreme, but maybe like, did you just not get great sleep? Did you drink the night before? Did you eat a bunch of sugar? Are you kind of mentally foggy? Like, find a way to get past that stuff. And if you're sitting there frustrated looking at the blank keyboard or screen or wherever you're trying to make music, uh, it just step back and think about your mental state and your physical state, and maybe just go for a walk. Just get on the treadmill, go walk around your neighborhood, uh, work out a little bit, like do something that breaks you out of that or gets you a little bit more energized, and then come back to it. It's funny how powerful that is and how simple that is, and like you've heard that a million times, uh, in regards to all other types of work, but you, for some reason, you still just don't do it. You're stuck there in your chair looking at your screen and you're just stuck and you won't actually do it. But it's actually pretty incredibly powerful if you just actually do it. Anyway, so the whole point, I guess, was that I'm not trying to make anything super perfect or hold on to anything yet. Man, I feel like this is going to be a long series if I just keep going this slow. But I guess this is kind of revealing to myself how, slow the process is, or just getting in touch with the reality of doing this type of video and explaining everything that I'm doing and thinking. Anyway, so I'm actually going to, I want to remind myself of what I was doing. Okay, so I think even though my playing is super bad and really inconsistent and stuff, I want to like have this natural thing going on that I'm doing right now. Like it's enough. So I'm actually going to just delete this. We'll just get rid of that, and I'm just going to kind of play intuitively like I have been, and we'll just go from there. I'll record this just to see what happens. All right. Okay, so sometimes I like to just, that's what helps me a lot, is just kind of just diving in and sort of having this sort of jamming, just having this like meditative thing happen where I'm just sort of repeating ideas. I'm living in the world of this little, womb idea, and the mother's kind of soprano voice over here, and then the heartbeat, and just kind of like extraneous lower grumbles of, a car passing by, or some loud music, or just like this kind of thing, right? So I'm just kind of, it's like sort of a meditation on this idea and just getting it out. That's why I like to record in Logic Pro, or even like, if I'm using a real piano or a guitar or something, I will use my voice notes, and sometimes Logic Pro if I'm actually like in my home studio, and then I'll notate, I'll clean things up and chop things up, and start to form, a musical idea out of it. So let's, I'm gonna just drag this over here. Okay. Dang. Okay, so that's obviously not, I'm not going to just necessarily be keeping all this material, but there might be something in there. And I kind of liked the inclination towards those major thirds, kind of right here, I think. No, those were the low things. So yeah, it looks like, okay, get rid of the keyboard for a second here. Look at this mess. Okay. Were those? No, those weren't. Let's just hear what happened here. No, that's the low stuff. Okay. So I'm gonna come over here. It looks like this is where we did those little thirds. Yeah. Right. So pretty, oh, what's all this? Can I delete those? Delete. This is like just from previous, I had like a template that I use for, so I can just pull up this kind of piano template, but this is just notes from something, from another thing that I made a long time ago. I thought I deleted these, but let's see, marker arrangement and marker. Don't want any of this stuff. Oh, I'm not even. I'm obviously not a pro at Pro Tools. Well, don't want to spend too much time on this. Cut section, delete, between locators. Why can I not figure out how to just delete these? Set locator split. Well, anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. All right, let's just hear what we have going on and see if I can think of something else. So, okay, so we're operating in this realm here. I'll actually just get out of there. Here, there's my face. Cool face, bro. Wow. Out of control here. Okay, there we go. So we're in this Actually, I don't know if you can see my, oh, there we go. So we're in this little section here. And you can see, like, there was just an intuitive idea of the texture here, right? That I kind of established. And, you know, it's like kind of heartbeat idea, these flat lines here. Let me make it a little bigger. Yeah, so we have, you know, it's like flat lines for heartbeat, but inconsistent. And then kind of these, you know, the mother's voice, you know, just, it's all in this lower register, assuming this line here is kind of the middle line of, you know, pitch of just register, say the center of the piano roughly, right? And so this is where we're operating. Yeah, I just keep repeating that. We're operating right here. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking at various times. So if we're looking at this sketch here, you know, if we are considering, you know, I'm gonna like pull this sonata form idea up again. So if we're kind of thinking in terms of themes, there are two opposing themes. Here, I'll try to indicate this. So, you know, we have this here, and then we have an opposing theme here, like a thesis and an antithesis, right? So this is a general good idea. We already have something like this. I don't know if that's going to be too small for your screen, so sorry about that. But we kind of have this, like, this whole thing can be A, you know, this kind of whole thing. And then this can be sort of the antithesis of that. So, you know, that could potentially do something. That could be a way to develop the music, right? And so what is happening here? So we have the sort of comfort of the womb. We have this soft texture in general. I mean, I know we had some low crazy dissonances in there as well, so I might need to clean those up and maybe soften them a little bit, but I do want to have some low grumbles, as if you're hearing extraneous tones from, you know, yeah, from the outside of the womb. So we have, you know, there's going to be that, and then there is this, you know, thing being ripped out of the womb right here. So that's like chaos and terror, right? So sensory overload. We're being ripped away from that comfortable zone, and that's sort of the opposing texture. And so I don't know, I start thinking like, does this recur, you know, as we sort of grow older and we have maybe this, you know, this musical world that we inhabit, from, you know, we have the like children's music. I'm gonna zoom in a bit. So we have this kind of children's music here, sort of our first exposure to, like, I don't know, music that we get to inhabit as in our stage of life, which is being an infant. And so it's like music from cartoons and from our toys and stuff like that, that our, you know, society and our parents feel is appropriate. And I don't know, we just inhabit that because it's what's given to us. We don't have a choice. And so it's simple, very simple rhythms, simple, happy melodies, not a lot of like low bass tones. It's all kind of in a higher range for the most part, middle to higher range. Um, okay, so back to the point of the two opposing themes. Is there like is there a point where maybe I don't know, like is there that sort of sensation of being ripped from the womb again ever? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. I'm just exploring this because maybe this will enrich the musical content as we go along. So, yeah, is there this, you know, this thing? Does it happen between um, the children's music and the, starting to like find our own music as we you know get a little older and start wanting to listen to our own music and stuff like that? uh, let's I wonder. uh, I feel like maybe not really, honestly. Maybe that's not the route to go, because it feels like it's pretty natural evolution. You're used to the children's music, and then eventually you just you get to an age where you kind of get just kind of tired of it, or you start to feel a distance from it. Like, I am just older than that. I've heard it a million times, and I want something. Naturally, we just want something different. We want more. We want more complexity. We want maybe also to fit in with the next generation. I don't know. We start evolving, and we just get older, and we want something a bit more complex and a bit more, I don't know, just different, and something that feels more mature, I guess. uh, Whatever it is, it feels like a natural evolution. So, okay, so that's not the thing. We won't do anything to that effect when we're moving from this idea of simplistic children's music to our own uh, exploration of music, which is often pop stuff. It's often maybe more of the type of music that our parents listened to, that we, kind of liked a little bit when we were a baby, but now we're like making our own choices and exploring things more consciously. Uh, yeah, so that feels like a natural evolution. Okay, so cool. Yeah, so I like the theme, or I like the form that we have right now. And I'm just thinking, how might that develop? You know what? I think I'm thinking too far ahead right now, which is what I tend to do. So let's go back to what we're doing. But see, this is kind of how I operate. It's like I'm kind of looking forward, then retracing, and then kind of looking forward, then retracing, and trying to just see where could things go. As now I have a little bit of material on the page, and now I'm kind of thinking of where could this potentially develop. But maybe we need that other intense part that comes after this, and we might need to like clean up the intense parts that we have so far, so that there's a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to go listen to this. I'm going to listen to this again, just this rough jam that I did, this sort of meditation on the idea, and just kind of see where my mind goes. So I'll just play it now. See, I like this. when I start thinking about something that feels musical, something that feels a little bit transcendent, like I talked about in the previous video, so those thirds, those harmonies there kind of touch on that. They start touching on that territory. I'm not saying they are super magical already, but they are like, they're now in that realm. And I want to try to kind of explain why. But okay, so like when we're listening here, okay, so that is this, pretty surface level. Like it has a personality, and but the idea is we have this simple two part texture, and it's this kind of, we're thinking about the mother's voice, which is a single line, right? The mother doesn't speak in two notes at once. Nobody does, unless you're like one of those monks. But anyway, so that is kind of a literal representation in a way, right? So this melodic thing with the heartbeat going abstractly. And then we have this, it's like emotional content. It's like this, it's like, it's more of a sensation, more of almost like a feeling about something. This thing here. That's like right, where is that coming from? And it's almost like a narrator, or like it's almost like the soundtrack behind, it's like I'm almost imagining it like a movie where this, like I'm picturing an actual womb, or an actual, fetus in the womb, like experiencing these sounds, and it's hearing the heartbeat, it's hearing the mother's, melodic voice, and then the sort of the narrating, sort of the soundtrack comes in, right, during this scene, and it's kind of guiding us to the emotional content of this thing, or roughly. And so this is the type of stuff that makes it musical to me. This is like I said, the sort of territory that begins the sort of a little bit of a magical sensation, or I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess. Okay, so this is a lot of material. Like I didn't really think. Sometimes I will put a time limit on the piece. Like I will kind of put a rough length for the piece. Like this is going to be a 2-minute piece, or 3 minutes, or something. And I generally like to write shorter pieces, but sometimes they just they want to be longer. So this will probably be longer than, I was thinking like 2 or 3 minutes, but geez, I'm going to try to manage it so that it's not a whole bunch of videos. But I don't know, is it really that bad if it is? Like, we're just making music here, we're just hanging out. So anyway, yeah. So that's something I want to refine a little bit. These chaotic things. So we have 3 textures going here, 3 sort of characters or lines: the mother's voice, the heartbeat, the extraneous noises outside of the womb. So that's our sonic world when we're in the womb. So we're building a world, and and we're looking for a way to kind of clean up these ideas. I really want to get rid of these markers, these locators. One second here. Okay. Hmm. This should be really, really simple. And I know it's going to be a dumb thing. Let's see here. Shift Command. Okay. Yeah, see, it's funny. I talked about this in the other video too, where it's like tools are getting in the way. And I don't like to use a lot of, I don't know, kind of just obsessed with the musical idea. And so sometimes I don't familiarize myself with even some of the most basic tools. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to spend any more time on that right now. I'll figure that out later. Okay, so I'm going to play this again, just kind of live in the world of it, and just kind of keep kind of conjuring up ideas, and I might move things around. So it's funny, you can tell well, when I'm not conscious of the independence of my two hands, I can tell that I get it, like one hand, when I'm focusing on a melodic idea, like in the right hand, then the left hand gets a little bit more excited when I start playing a melodic idea, unless I consciously think about my other hand while I'm playing, which I did a couple times, and I slowed down in the left hand when I played a melody once I was aware of it. So this is one of those moments where it kind of like gets more rhythmic here in that low F. It's just kind of funny, more excited. So, dun dun. Just delete some of these. Kind of like the way, I kind of like this sort of leading back down into that F, how like, there will be something melodic, like then it drops down into that F note, as if that's like part of that's the like cadence of the melodic idea. But it's still that separate line, like it's, yeah. So I actually played the octave there, and I don't like that. So, because I want the only F that exists to be this low one. That just feels cleaner, and it kind of, in counterpoint, you know, there's there's a rule for very good reason that you don't use parallel octaves, and this isn't really that, but to me it has that effect. Like parallel octaves kind of have this well, they lose, each tone loses their independence and they become one thing. And so that's kind of the general idea of what I'm trying to avoid that effect for now. Sometimes I will use parallel octaves for an effect, for, to strengthen a melodic idea, or to strengthen a note within a harmony or something like that, within two harmonies, I should say. Moving from one to another, sometimes that's on purpose, but you have to be conscious of it. Otherwise, if you're not, you get this sort of hole in the music, this like standout note that you don't really want to stand out, to stick out. So we'll get rid of that. Okay. There's another F there, and that, 2 octaves above. That does feel a little too, I'm just kind of exploring this whole thing, and just sort of adjusting things. And I might, cut a little melodic thing. I kind of like this here, and I might kind of cut that and develop it a little bit more, or use that as kind of a main theme, or lead into it or something. So once I get a melodic idea that feels kind of strong, a gesture and melodic idea, then I can really like run with it, and I can start playing with that and start using even just the general shape of it as something to uh, create as an element of consistency throughout the piece to make it cohesive. So like you can see the general shape of this, like it's kind of this up and then stepping down, you know, it's this kind of like almost upside down check mark sort of thing. Just, you know, that's a gesture, like a general shape, and I can use that gesture in a lot of different ways using different notes and even, you know, harmonies and stuff, and I can shorten it and lengthen it and things like that. So you can really just take one idea like this and you can use its melodic content, you can use its implied harmonic content, and you can use its rhythm, or you can use even just its shape, so its gestural shape. So there's a lot. Like you can just take this and you can just explode that into all kinds of different things. You can cut it up and use just, you know, part of it, like, you know, just like I could repeat that and develop that little moment, or this first half, you know, na 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 na. So that's kind of, now I'm like really zooming in and finding just a little bit of like a just some atomic material to explode. So I'm building a bomb out of this. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so let's see here. So I like, okay. There's honestly just a lot here. And this is often what will happen is just an improv will feel messy and I'm like, oh no, I'll just get rid of that. And, you know, like I got rid of the first, you know, sort of heartbeat idea. I just erased that, and the melodic idea I did over that. I just erased that. So sometimes I'll just get rid of everything and it's fine. And then I will get into that little world again and do another little improv, and then something that I like will start coming out of that, and I really just have to move a few things around, and then that just becomes the basis of the whole thing. And that's fine. Like it's totally fine. It doesn't like this kind of thing right here is where like I used to get really stuck in my head, where it's like I felt like this isn't legit, like this isn't genius enough, this, you know, this is lazy, like I'm being lazy and making just messy, lazy, simple stuff. Like I felt like I had to and I know this isn't everybody's problem, but I know that I'm not just the only one here. But I just felt like I needed to put more effort in, like it needed to be to it needed to like feel like I'm pushing the extent of my ability at every moment. And if I wasn't, then it was not worthy. Like it wasn't good. And so this is where I just love it. I have so much fun with this because I'm just like, cool, like something happened. It was natural. It was intuitive. It did come from a general preconceived, idea. Like I, you know, started down in the lower end of the range because we have this formal idea that it came from some rich philosophical material, and so that's fine. Like there's a lot behind this. That there's a lot already, a lot of sort of content behind this idea to have come out, that made it come out this way, so seemingly easily. Yeah. So I just want to, I'm going to play with some of this for a minute, and I'll just try to keep, you know, I'll try to talk through it, but I'll probably just be quiet and repeat the music and adjust things and stuff. So, because that's just kind of how I work. I'm also not used to sitting here just explaining every little thing I do. So, this actually is making me more conscious of how I work also. Yeah. Something has to develop from that. Those thirds. Yeah. Um, Also, something that I do when I am adjusting the MIDI notes, I will never quantize it. Quantizing. So that basically just snaps it into a grid so that everything is every note lands perfectly at the same time. And that ruins it for me. That makes it unnatural and more machine-like. So I will purposely, if I'm like placing notes manually, I will make them a little bit imperfect. I mean, if you zoom in, look how like imperfect that is. That's supposed to be a chord harmony. Excuse me. Here, same thing, and I like that. That's natural. That's what a natural recording of someone playing looks like. And yeah, sometimes they're like way off, and I need to adjust and just make it feel like a better performance. But all right, so what is the material that I'm using? Also, like I should narrow in on a consistency of harmonic material, of the scale or the intervallic material that I'm trying to that I'm I talked about in the other video. I talked about how I don't really use I don't use the tonal system, but I will play a lot with pseudo tonality, and borrow from it as a palette. But my music would be generally considered atonal. So sometimes I will approach a piece with a preconceived idea of a scale that I want to use, that I just come up with. Like I know there's names and like set class names for every combination of notes within the 12 note, Western 12 note system. But I don't really care about names and labels and stuff like that when it comes to, I'm not trying to, I don't care about that until it becomes important. I come up with something that I like the shape and color of. For me, it's a visual process, and I like I like spatial relationships. So if I'm thinking I'm going to be writing something with a decent amount of dissonance, I will want chunks of closer intervals within that scale. So I might do, something like three, chunks of three notes like that. And that will build the scale. And then, there are also open intervals within that. Obviously, there are always going to be open and closed intervals for the most part, unless you're using like the whole tone scale, then I guess there's not. I mean, there's still a dissonant interval, the tritone, in a whole tone scale, but still, there are scales or rows of intervals that are more open and some are more closed, and I like a variety, and depending on the flavor of the work I'm working on, I will come up with something that feels appropriate. And or so that's like if I'm starting with a scale in mind, just because of its kind of color and intervallic content. Um, and the other way is this way that is becoming apparent now, right? I didn't start with a preconceived kind of like scale in mind saying I'm going to use this set of notes or this set of intervals. I intuitively just wanted to play around in the range, in this lower range, and see kind of what happens. And then I started thinking of like the emotional content of it, which is, that we are, if we're thinking about our experience in the womb, and as Peter Sloterdijk, kind of describes it, it's like the best. It's the best place. It's like basically home. That's the ideal. That's what the ideal that we are searching for when we listen to music or make music or be in a musical realm, is that sensation of being back in the womb. And so so I play with just material that conjures up intuitively with my fingers, just playing intervals that I know are a certain width and open and closed, and naturally sort of a pseudo F major thing starts happening, right? Okay, so I'm using free open material, and I'm thinking in intervals. I'm not thinking I'm gonna, be in F major now, and I'm gonna move to the 4 and then to the 5 and then whatever. So, okay, I've probably beaten that to death by now, but just trying to describe my methods here. So I guess, yeah, the point was that we're in the, I described earlier in the other video that I'll either start with a chord, or I will often start intuitively, or I'll start with a scale, sorry, that I have preconceived, or I will, start making music intuitively, with spatial relationships that I naturally just intuitively come up with, and then I will derive the scale from that. I will derive the material that I'm going to be working with from that. And sometimes it looks very similar to a major scale or one of the modes of the major scale. And when I start, it's funny because I'll rebel against that pretty quickly, just because that's my nature, I guess, or because I don't want to be, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I just naturally want to move away from that. And so if I recognize that I am falling into that set of notes, I will purposely sort of break it, and I will add minor seconds to it. I will add more different intervals to it. So, okay, that being said, that's probably what will happen. We will find our set of intervals, our initial scale. So, okay, I'm talking a lot and I'm kind of losing track of the world of the music, so I'm going to play this again and just kind of be in the world of it for a minute. It's funny. I'm just thinking when I listen to this, how good it feels when I hear those these low dissonant things. I love that little moment there. I don't know. It's just funny. I start thinking about how I have such a low tolerance for just for pleasantness. It's like I absolutely love Bach, and I love traditional classical music and music that's considered just beautiful and doesn't have crazy dissonance or anything um, real that stands out a whole lot. But it's I listen to a lot of that, and that's just its own thing. Like I guess it's just different. I don't know. Um, Maybe this just isn't enough musical information. Just this drone on F, and this little melodic material. But I find that when the dissonance comes in, these like this sort of violent thing underneath, that's what like satisfies me. I really want that to happen. It feels good to me, and it's a little funny, um, and and it's like I just want more of that, which I'm gonna get more of that for sure. But yeah, I don't know. This is just an observation, but I really like this little moment here where we have all three. We really haven't had all three components yet, where we have the heartbeat figure, we have the mother's voice figure, and then we have the extraneous noise outside of the womb. So we have all of that here, and it's kind of a cool little moment here. I don't know, I like that general idea there. That's kind of a moment there, this little din. um, that feels like almost like feels like a brighter moment, like in the mother kind of just had a little chuckle or something. So I kind of like, I don't know. We'll do this like general thing here where I just repeat this. Maybe kind of, this might be too slow for a laugh, but let's see how fast this actually is. Oh, and yeah, I just said let's see how fast this actually is. So you might be wondering about this insanely fast tempo that I have it just set at, which is 500 BPM. That's obviously not, that's unreasonable. I Since I'm not writing for a pianist, or necessarily for a physical piano to be played, and I'm just capturing the musical idea. If I have it set at a really high tempo like this, I don't really use this tempo to lock in how the tempo of the music actually is represented, like how it actually feels. I use that as a way to make an impossibly fast, like really like impossible passage. So if I put a bunch of MIDI notes together really quickly, or really closely, then that 500 tempo is going to play them way faster than a tempo at 120. And so I use that as kind of an instrument in itself, a tool, rather than an actual true tempo marking, if that makes sense. And that's another way that I like to kind of make it clear that I am, like, if this is what ends up being the musical result, which it will, like I'm using the piano sound, and as I've said a bunch of times now, I'm not writing for the actual piano, but I'm using the sound of the piano to tell this musical story. Um, and then I kind of like the idea, well, I really like the idea of making it very clear that I'm using a piano sample and that I'm not trying to lie or convince the ear that this is a real piano being played. I'm That's really important to me. I don't really want to fake an instrument's sound, and for that reason, you'll probably never see me use any kind of like plug-in or orchestral strings or like anything like that, unless it's only as like a just a test to hear what it might sound like so that I can, you know, have real musicians play it. But I'll never use that as the like permanent, like the official recording. And that's fine. You can, you can do what you want. I'm not expressing an opinion of whether that is right or wrong, but for me, I just don't like the way that feels. I did make an entire album of, using that concept, what I call impossible piano, super original name, but that's kind of what I consider the instrument that I used is impossible piano. And I have a whole long write-up on the album, and it's on Bandcamp, so if you want to check that out. I put that out a year ago, like a year and a half ago, and it's very similar to what I'm doing right here. So it uses the same idea, but the whole thing is kind of a concept album. It has it's an exploration of some of my own tendencies, and yeah. Anyway, so it's under the moniker Lonewick, Lonewyck. I'll try to remember to put that in the description, but it's on Bandcamp. The album is called Existence is Futile, which is just funny. But please, like the link, if you go to that, if you find it in Bandcamp, I also have a newsletter under that moniker. I'm thinking of kind of combining the two. Maybe I'll just use my real name, or maybe I'll keep the moniker separate. Who knows? But it's all just me. And I can explain why that all came about or how it came about some other time. But yeah, if you want to explore more of this type of thing from me, then that's a great place to start, is listening to that album. So it's on Bandcamp. Okay, anyway, let's get back to the music. It's already been over the amount of time that I said I would spend on this. So you can see there's kind of this texture already, just from this intuitive, improv moment. We have a beginning where the heartbeat, the thing that alludes to the heartbeat at least, happens. And then you can kind of see just visually, we have these little gestures, these spaced out little moments. And that's kind of, it represents the mother's voice, and that, it's kind of representative of talking. It's, when we speak, we're not just constantly saying this endless line of, this endless melodic line. We say short and faster things, and we have moments of pause while we listen to the other person, or that kind of thing. And it has natural shape, it has cadence. So yeah, that is now, I'm starting to see that as the sort of phrase structure a little bit. And I don't want too much of that. So this will obviously be shortened. But there's a lot that I can use here. So I'm just trying to think of how far I want to go now before I have to end this session. Because if I start diving into something else, then I have to kind of stay on that line and continue it, and that might take a lot longer. So let me just play through this and kind of see what else comes to mind, and I might make some notes, and yeah, we'll go from there. See that there's this cool little, even in that, like sort of um, this moment that goes, this slightly heightened moment that is not quite the mother's voice, but it's sort of the like, a, it's sort of giving us some of the emotional content. Man, it's hard to explain what I'm seeing here, but because it is polyphonic, it is clearly, it becomes separated from the monophonic mother's voice. Polyphonic just meaning two lines at the same time, two notes being played at the same time. But then there's this cool, like, I talked about the cadence that drops back down into to being sort of answered by the heartbeat, the F in the heartbeat. So this, like, the melodic line of, say, the mother's voice dropping back down into this bass level, the heartbeat just takes over and it ends the phrase. I just like that. It's just kind of it just feels nice. And it feels like they're connected, right? And so this little other element did that same thing here. Right? Dun, 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 dun. It just dropped right back down. Yeah, I just kind of like that. This feels a little too long. Wanted that to be longer. But not too dramatic. Like, long means pay attention to me, but I want it to be an attention point there, but not too strong. I like that moment of just space right there after. So we get this little bit thicker texture here. This texture here. We get this cadence here, and then kind of a question. And then we get this, a little bit thicker. We have 3 notes here. That thickens it up just a bit. And then it drops into just a moment of silence, just a second. And actually, now that I think about it, I talked about, let's see, we'll pull this image up again, formal idea. So we talked about this high contrast moment being the kind of the place where this dissonances should come in and contrast with the more pleasant thing that we're doing right now with this whole thing that I recorded, which is here. and I talked about how maybe I should get rid of these, or sort of minimize, soften these dissonances here. But I don't really, I mean, they're still within a tight range. They're super low. And I think it actually might be good to keep those, to keep the intensity of those. Maybe this one looks, this is pretty fiery, so let's just hear. You know, so that's pretty intense. This one, that one is too. So maybe the intensity of some of them, like that one that was pretty bold and pretty loud and chunky, I might want to soften that a little bit, soften that. But I'm actually thinking that this is introducing it's another character. It's the outside world. And actually, I mean, this is actually pretty cool. So I'm going to sketch this in. Yeah, let's see here. I have a lot going on here, but okay, I'll use some yellow because this is going to relate. My idea is that it will relate to that high contrast yellow section that comes after this. It's the same character. It's the outside, right? So it's those little grumbles, that dissonance and stuff like that. That is, you know, the traffic going by. It's loud music playing, whatever. It's like something external that isn't the comfort of our mother's heartbeat and voice. And we are subject to that outside. That's our, you know, as Sloterdijk puts it, we our sense of hearing is our only contact with the outside world when we're in the womb, and it's our first contact with the outside world, even if we're not conscious of it. So grab yellow here so we can show the relation. And so we will have, you know, some of this, eraser mode, eraser head. Okay. Well, that's too soon. In general, in this rough sketch, we'll try to be like somewhat spatially appropriate. So it's a little bigger. Okay, so just like, you know, this kind of thing. We have these things that relate to that, right? And I will oh man, messing up my beautiful artwork. No. That's okay. There is something like, I kind of like, I like this. It feels like it's its own piece of art, you know. I don't know. I like the whole process. I like making sort of the visual art, even if the music doesn't end up doing really that same, even if it's not, you know, perfectly in line with what the music ends up being. This is just a fun part of it for me. That was terrible. Anyway, that's fine. No, it's not. Because I'm crazy. Okay. Stop doing the perfectionist thing. Oh no. It's fine. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. Okay. Okay, so I do need to get going. I'm trying to keep these like under 2 hours. I honestly thought that these would, like I wouldn't have enough material or something. I don't know, like 2 hours feels just short, actually. Um, but I guess if I am not sitting here explaining myself and trying to articulate everything that I'm doing, then the music process, the compositional process, goes a lot faster. Um, but it's fun doing this. So let's see, is there anything that I want to make note of before I leave? Sometimes I'll try to just make reminders. Um, I guess I could just watch the video again also. But yeah, we will. I think what I'll do next time is I will take, a melodic idea like this one and start kind of developing it, and I will derive the melodic content out of what I've come up with here, and I might adjust some things. And I'll I will explain myself along the way. So that little that's a little intense. I like this little glitchy moment here too. Here, I'll get rid of the sketch for a second. So this little moment here, I like those little notes. Even though you don't hear them, they're just a little bit of a texture. Okay, so that's, I don't want this to go on too much. It gets boring really quickly, and the drone, that droning F heartbeat thing it gets old fast. So I kind of have this idea. It's going to feel at once relieving and super tense, like a lot more tension once we break out of this and we go into this idea of being ripped out of the womb, and the intensity of that. I'm kind of excited to get into that. And but yeah, so I'll develop this a little further next time. And I will clean it up a bit and probably shorten it, and just try to make a little bit more, give it a little bit more structure, some phrasing, something that has a sense of not just wandering completely, but also not repeating things exactly. So the whole thing is a story. We're moving along a timeline, and I want to establish a sound and a world, and then but I also want you to have an expectation that it's going somewhere. And so I need to build some sort of tension, or at least like start to introduce tension, which we've already done here in these moments, this moment here, so you're kind of like, but we could shape it to be a little bit more, to have a little bit more of a character, like, yeah. It's simple. I'm going to keep this pretty simple because I could go really deep. and it's fun to do that. But for the sake of recording this and demonstrating how we can get through a piece and make it cohesive and make it tell a story and hopefully hold the interest of the listener from the beginning to the end. That's kind of the point of this whole thing. So that's what I'm trying to manage, is not getting too into the weeds of the composition and just getting the musical idea out. Because then after that, I can start perfecting. I can add. I can, if I want to orchestrate this, I can adjust things, and I can make it for for a small ensemble or something, if I want to have it performed. And things like that. There's so much I can do with it, but the musical idea is the thing that matters the most, and that's what we will aim to accomplish here. So yeah, with that being said, yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I hope there was something to take away from this. This is only the second session of several, so yeah, we'll come back and we'll start where we left off, and we'll just proceed through the piece, and I'll just try to keep talking through it. So, all right, thanks.